The sun had barely risen above the horizon when Elias stepped out of the small wooden house that had been his family's home for generations. The air was crisp, carrying the faint smell of earth and hay, a scent that had always been part of his life. He rubbed his tired eyes and looked out over the ranch, stretching far into the distance. The fences were weathered, the fields uneven, and the cattle needed attention. Life on the ranch was never easy, and in recent years, it had become harder. Elias had lost his wife to illness 5 years earlier, leaving him to raise their 2 children alone. Every day felt like a struggle between surviving and giving his children a life he wished they deserved. As he saddled his horse and prepared to check the cattle, a strange movement caught his eye near the tree line at the edge of the property. At first, he thought it was a deer or some other wild animal, but the figure that emerged was unlike anything he had ever seen. It was a woman, but taller than any human he had ever encountered, moving with a gentle grace despite her enormous size. Her hair was long and dark, flowing like a river over her shoulders, and her eyes seemed to hold a sadness so deep that Elias felt a shiver run down his spine. She stopped at the edge of the field and simply looked at him, as if she had been waiting for this moment. For a few long seconds, neither of them moved. The children, who were peeking out from the porch, whispered nervously to each other. The townspeople had always told stories of a mysterious giant woman who wandered the outskirts of the valley. Some said she was dangerous, others claimed she was a spirit, or even a guardian of the land. Elias had always dismissed the tales as exaggerations. Yet now, standing before him, the stories felt real, almost too real. The giant woman took a cautious step forward, her voice soft but carrying across the fields. "I am Isolde," she said. "I have come because I need to find a place where I belong." Elias felt his heart tighten at the tone of her voice. It was not commanding or threatening. It was gentle, filled with a longing that he could somehow understand. "I can help you," he said instinctively, though he didn't fully know why he offered. You can stay, if you wish." Isolde shook her head slowly. Her eyes, wide and filled with both hope and despair, met his. "It is not enough to simply stay," she whispered. "I have no family. I have no home. All I have is the land that once belonged to mine. I will give it all to you. Everything. If you let me care for your children and help your family. I have no other purpose but to serve and protect those I can love." Her words were almost a plea, and Elias found himself struggling to grasp the weight of them. He thought of his children, young and innocent, often lonely without a mother's presence. The idea of someone so kind, so powerful, who could protect and guide them, seemed almost too good to be true. Yet, at the same time, doubt crept into his mind. Could he trust someone so mysterious? Could he let a giant stranger into his home and his life? The stories of the townspeople warned him to be careful. Yet, in her eyes, he saw something he could not ignore. Honesty, vulnerability, and the desire to belong. The children, drawn by curiosity, slowly stepped closer. Their eyes widened at the sight of Isolde. She knelt down, bringing herself closer to their level, though she still towered over them. Her voice was soft as she spoke to them, telling them not to be afraid. She smiled gently, and even in that brief moment, the children felt a warmth they had not experienced since their mother had passed. Elias watched silently, realizing that their laughter and smiles returned even in her presence, as if she carried a light that had been missing from their lives. Over the next few days, Elias observed Isolde from a cautious distance. She worked quietly, moving large rocks to repair broken fences, helping the livestock, and even clearing fields faster than anyone he had ever seen. Her strength was extraordinary, but she used it with care, never harming the land she had come to guard. Every action she took showed a mixture of power and tenderness, and Elias found himself drawn to her presence more and more. The townspeople, meanwhile, whispered and gossiped about her. Some were frightened, some curious, and a few openly mocked the idea of a giant woman helping a human family. Yet, As they watched her interact with the children and help Elias, their fear began to change into awe. Isolde never sought attention or praise. She simply did what she had promised, day after day, silently proving her dedication. Elias could see a change in his children. Their laughter became more frequent, their steps more confident, and their hearts lighter. They looked up to Isolde not just as a caretaker but as someone who had come into their lives to fill a space they had missed for so long. He noticed how his daughter would ask her questions about the stars and the earth, and his son would try to mimic the way she lifted heavy objects with ease. Elias felt a mix of gratitude and something deeper, an emotion he had buried since his wife's passing. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of gold and red, Elias and Isolde sat together on the porch, watching the children play in the fields. The air was quiet, except for the soft sounds of the farm. He finally spoke what had been on his mind for days. "Why me?" he asked quietly. "Why our family?" Isolde turned to him, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "Because I saw something in your family I have never seen elsewhere," she said softly. "Love, even when it hurts. Strength, even when life is hard. And hope. Hope that someone like me could belong somewhere." Her voice was barely more than a whisper, yet it carried an unshakable conviction. Elias felt a lump in his throat. He had been lonely, but now he realized that her presence was not just helping his family. It was healing something deep within him as well. The trust between them grew slowly. Each day, she proved herself more than words could. Each evening, she shared stories of her past, of lands she had cared for, of people who had abandoned her, and of a loneliness that stretched longer than any road. Elias listened, sometimes in silence, sometimes asking questions he never thought he would dare. And each day, the bond grew stronger, not just out of necessity, but out of mutual respect and understanding. Though the town remained wary, the ranch began to change. The fences were sturdier, the fields more fertile, and the children laughed freely. The land itself seemed to respond to her presence, almost as if it recognized her care and nurturance. And as the days passed, Elias began to understand that this was no ordinary woman. She was a force of nature, gentle, yet powerful, who had entered their lives to change them forever. By the time the first month passed, Elias no longer questioned her intentions. He saw in her a rare honesty, a desire to give without expecting in return. And though he did not yet fully understand the depth of her emotions, he knew that Isolde had come into their lives for a reason. She had given them more than help. She had brought hope, healing, and a promise of a future that was brighter than anything he had imagined. At the edge of the ranch, where the horizon met the sky, Isolde would often stand and look out over the fields. It was in those quiet moments that Elias realized she was still searching for something, not just belonging, but acceptance, love, and a place to call home. He wondered if one day they could give her that. And as the stars began to twinkle above, he felt, for the first time in years, a sense of peace he thought he had lost forever. Life on the ranch slowly began to change in ways Elias had never imagined. With Isolde's presence, every day felt different, brighter somehow. She moved through the fields with quiet confidence, her tall frame making even the most difficult tasks seem simple. Elias watched her lift hay bales that would have taken him hours to move, mend fences in record time, and guide the cattle with ease. Her strength was extraordinary, but it was not the kind that frightened him. It was careful, thoughtful, almost gentle in its power, and it amazed him more with each passing day. The children, too, were changing. At first, they had been shy, wary of her unusual size and unfamiliar presence. But Isolde had a way with them. She didn't try to command their attention or force them to play. Instead, she knelt down to their level, spoke softly, and shared stories that sparked their imaginations. Soon, the children began to laugh again, something Elias hadn't heard in years. His daughter would run to her every morning, eager to learn about the world beyond the ranch, while his son tried to mimic her movements, lifting small logs and pretending he was as strong as she was. Elias felt a quiet joy watching these small moments. knowing that his children were finding happiness and guidance in a way they had not had since their mother's passing. Isolde did more than help with physical labor. She began teaching the children about the land itself. She spoke of seasons, of how to read the sky, how to understand the soil, and how to work in harmony with nature rather than against it. She told them stories of faraway lands, of her family's traditions, and of the lessons she had learned while wandering alone. The children listened with wide eyes, asking endless questions, and Isolde answered them all patiently, never showing frustration or impatience. Elias realized that she was filling a void that had been missing in their lives, a void of care, of guidance, and of unconditional attention. The townspeople, however, were not entirely convinced of her good intentions. Rumors spread quickly, as they always did in small towns. Some whispered that she was a spirit, a ghost, or even a dangerous woman who might harm the family. Children in the village were told to stay away, and adults cast cautious glances when she passed through town. At first, Elias worried about these whispers. He feared for his family's safety, unsure if their neighbors might act on their suspicions. But slowly, the town began to see what Elias had seen from the beginning. Isolde was kind, gentle, and utterly devoted to helping his family. One day, a neighbor's cow had wandered into Elias's field. The man came running, angry and demanding explanations. Elias braced himself for conflict, expecting a confrontation, but Isolde stepped forward calmly, her voice firm yet kind. With a few careful gestures, she guided the cow back to its owner, explaining with patience how it had gotten loose. The neighbor's anger faded, replaced by astonishment. People began to murmur to each other, realizing that the stories they had told were exaggerated or false. Slowly, the fear turned into respect. At the ranch, a quiet bond was forming between Elias and Isolde. They spent long hours working side by side, repairing fences, tending the fields, and caring for the animals. There were moments of silence, comfortable and peaceful, when neither spoke but understood the trust and connection growing between them. Elias noticed that he had begun to rely on her presence in ways he hadn't expected. It was not just her strength or skill, it was her understanding, her compassion, and the sense of calm she brought to the chaotic life of the ranch. As the weeks passed, Elias began to learn more about Isolde's past. She spoke of a family that had abandoned her for being different, leaving her to wander alone and protect the land that had been hers by birthright. She had been rejected for her size, her strength, and for reasons that seemed unfair and cruel. Elias listened in silence, feeling a mix of sorrow and admiration. Her story was tragic, yet it revealed a resilience he could hardly imagine. Despite being alone for so long, she had not become bitter. Instead, she had chosen to offer care and help to a family in need. The children adored her. She taught them not only about practical skills but also about courage, kindness, and resilience. She encouraged them to dream, to explore, and to face challenges with confidence. Elias noticed that they were growing more independent, more confident, and happier than they had been in years. For the first time since his wife's death, he felt hope. The ranch was no longer just a place of hard work and survival. It was becoming a home filled with laughter, learning, and love. One afternoon, Elias and Isolde worked together to repair a large section of fence that had been damaged in a storm. The sun was high, and sweat ran down their faces. But neither complained. They moved in rhythm, almost like dancers, passing tools and working side by side. When the job was done, they stood back and admired their work. Elias turned to her, a rare smile on his face. "I don't know how I ever managed without you," he said quietly. Isolde looked at him, her expression soft, almost shy. "You managed because you cared," she replied. "I am just here to help where I can. That is all I ask." Their conversation slowly moved beyond work. They spoke of dreams, of hopes, and of things they had never shared with anyone else. Elias found himself talking about his wife, his fears, and the future he wished for his children. Isolde listened without judgment, offering gentle encouragement and understanding. Her presence was soothing, and Elias began to realize that he was not only growing to trust her, but also to care for her in a way he had not expected. Despite the growing bond, Elias and Isolde were careful. There was no rush, no pressure, only a quiet understanding that they were becoming important to each other. Elias admired her strength and kindness, while Isolde valued his honesty, patience, and the love he showed for his children. Together, they were forming a partnership that was as much about emotional support as it was about practical help. The seasons began to change, and the ranch flourished under their combined efforts. Crops grew tall and healthy, the cattle were well fed, and the children thrived. The once dull fields were now vibrant, and the house felt alive again. It was not just the physical improvements that mattered, it was the sense of belonging, of family, and of hope that Isolde had brought with her. Elias often found himself marveling at the transformation, realizing that her arrival had changed everything for the better. One evening, after a long day of work, Elias and Isolde sat on the porch together, watching the sun set over the fields. The children played nearby, laughing and chasing each other. The sky was painted with shades of orange and pink, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of flowers and freshly cut hay. Elias looked at Isolde, feeling a warmth in his chest he had not felt in years. "You've made a difference here," he said softly. "Not just for the ranch, but for us, for the children." Isolde smiled, a gentle and quiet smile that spoke of gratitude and relief. "I only wanted a place to belong," she said, "and maybe I've found it here." The trust between them continued to grow. Elias no longer questioned her intentions or doubted her presence. He saw in her a rare honesty, a desire to give without expecting anything in return, and a heart that was both strong and tender. The children looked up to her not just as a caretaker, but as someone who had come into their lives to guide, protect, and love them. As night fell and the stars appeared in the clear sky, Elias realized that life on the ranch was no longer about mere survival. It was about family, connection, and the quiet strength that came from caring for one another. And in that moment, he understood something he had not admitted before. Isolde had become more than a helper, more than a friend. She had become a part of their family, a presence that brought light into their lives and hope into their hearts. With each passing day, their bond grew stronger, and the ranch thrived in ways Elias had never imagined. The work was still hard, the days long, but with Isolde by his side, life felt richer, warmer, and more full of promise. He knew that challenges would come, that the world would not always be kind, but with her presence, he felt a strength he had never known before. And so, under the vast sky and on the fertile land of the ranch, life continued, filled with hope, laughter, and the quiet beginnings of a bond that promised to endure. Life on the ranch had begun to feel almost normal, though Elias knew that peace rarely lasted long in the frontier. The crops were flourishing, the cattle were healthy, and the children's laughter filled the air. But as the days grew warmer and the sun rose higher, a new tension began to creep into their lives, threatening the stability they had worked so hard to create. It started with a letter. One morning, a courier arrived at the ranch, dusty from travel, carrying a heavy envelope sealed with the mark of a neighboring landowner. Elias opened it carefully, recognizing the familiar sharp handwriting of Mr. Hawthorne, a man known in the valley for being ruthless in business. The letter demanded that Elias relinquish part of his land, claiming that a small section of the ranch legally belonged to Hawthorne's family. The words were sharp and threatening, offering no room for compromise. Elias's hands trembled slightly as he read. He knew that without proof or support, the land could easily be taken, leaving his family in a vulnerable position. Isolde was standing nearby, observing Elias with quiet concern. When he showed her the letter, she read it slowly, her brow furrowing. "They are trying to take what is ours," she said calmly. "But this land is more than paper and claims. It is ours because we care for it, because we protect it." Her voice was steady, but Elias could sense the tension in her heart. Though she had lived a long life alone, she understood that protecting what mattered sometimes required courage and action. The following days were filled with preparation and planning. Elias visited the town to seek advice from the local magistrate. while Isolde stayed behind to protect the ranch and care for the children. Her presence was both comforting and commanding. The children clung to her, feeling safe as she moved through the fields with quiet authority. She repaired the fences along the disputed section and reinforced the barns, knowing that Hawthorne's men might try to cause trouble. Every task she performed carried a sense of purpose and strength that reminded Elias why he had trusted her from the very beginning. As the conflict drew closer, Isolde finally spoke of her past in greater detail. One evening, while the children slept and the moon cast a silver glow over the fields, she sat with Elias by the fire and began to tell her story. She spoke of a family that had disowned her for being different, too large, too strong, too unusual. They had feared her, or perhaps they had been ashamed. She had been left alone to protect the ancestral lands, wandering for years without a home, without companionship, and without hope. Her voice trembled slightly, not from weakness, but from the weight of years of loneliness. Elias listened in silence, realizing that her resilience was extraordinary. He thought of the way she had cared for his children, repaired the ranch, and faced every challenge with calm determination. Despite her hardships, she had never become bitter or angry. Instead, she had chosen to offer help, to serve, and to protect. He felt a deep respect for her, mixed with a growing admiration that he could no longer ignore. The tension came to a head one afternoon when Hawthorne's men arrived at the ranch. They were rough, imposing figures, clearly expecting to intimidate Elias into surrendering the disputed land. The children watched nervously from behind the porch, while Elias stood with a mixture of anger and fear. He felt helpless, unsure if he could protect his family and his home. Then Isolde stepped forward. Her presence alone was enough to draw attention. She stood tall, towering over the men, her expression calm yet firm. "This land is protected," she said in a voice that carried across the fields. "You will not harm it, nor the people who live here." There was no threat in her words, only certainty. The men hesitated, unnerved by her sheer size and quiet authority. When they ignored her warning and attempted to push forward, Isolde acted with precise strength. She moved quickly, guiding the cattle to safety, securing the barns, and blocking the men from advancing. Elias watched in awe as she handled the situation with ease and control, turning what could have been a dangerous confrontation into a display of power tempered with care. The men soon realized that they could not intimidate the giant woman, and they retreated, muttering under their breath. The incident left Elias shaken but deeply grateful. He realized that Isolde's strength was not only physical but also emotional and moral. She had faced fear, danger, and loneliness for years, and yet she had chosen to protect those who were vulnerable. In that moment, Elias understood that she was more than a helper. She was a guardian, a presence that brought safety and stability to the family. After the confrontation, the town slowly began to change its perception of Isolde. People who had once whispered behind her back now spoke of her with respect. Some came to offer apologies for their doubts, while others marveled at her courage and dedication. The children, too, were proud of her, seeing her not just as a caretaker but as a hero who had saved their home. Elias felt a mixture of relief and pride, knowing that the person he had trusted was capable of facing any challenge that came their way. In the quiet moments that followed, Isolde and Elias found themselves talking more openly about their feelings. They shared memories of their past, hopes for the future, and fears that they had long kept hidden. Elias spoke of his wife, of the pain of losing her, and of the loneliness that had followed. Isolde listened without judgment, offering comfort and understanding that he had not found elsewhere. In return, she shared more of her story, revealing the depth of her isolation and the longing she had felt for a place to belong. The bond between them deepened, not through grand gestures or declarations, but through shared experience, trust, and understanding. They began to see each other not just as companions or partners in work, but as two people who had found solace in one another. Elias realized that he had begun to care for her in a way he had not expected, and he sensed that she felt the same, though neither spoke the words aloud. The children continued to thrive under her guidance. She taught them lessons about courage, kindness, and resilience, showing them how to face challenges with confidence and grace. They learned not only practical skills, but also emotional strength, guided by her patience and wisdom. Elias watched them grow, grateful for the stability and love that Isolde had brought into their lives. As the weeks passed, the ranch settled into a rhythm once more. The threat from Hawthorne faded, and the land remained safe under Isolde's watchful eye. Yet, Elias knew that life would always bring challenges, that danger and uncertainty were never far away. But with Isolde by his side, he felt a strength he had never known, a sense of partnership and trust that made him believe they could face anything together. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Elias and Isolde stood together on a hill overlooking the fields. The sky was painted with deep shades of orange and purple, and the air was filled with the gentle hum of crickets and the soft rustle of leaves. Elias turned to her, feeling a warmth in his chest that he could no longer ignore. "You've done more than help," he said quietly. "You've given us hope. You've given the children a family again." Isolde smiled softly, a mixture of relief and quiet happiness in her eyes. "I only wanted to belong," she said. "And now, I think I have." Her words were simple, yet they carried the weight of years of loneliness, fear, and longing. Elias felt a lump in his throat, realizing that she had found a home not just in the ranch, but in their hearts as well. That night, as the family sat together by the fire, Elias reflected on the events that had unfolded. The challenges they faced had tested their strength, courage, and trust, but they had come through stronger than before. Isolde had proven herself not only as a protector but as a part of their family, someone whose presence had transformed their lives in ways he could never have imagined. The stars twinkled above, casting a soft glow over the ranch. In that peaceful moment, Elias knew that while the world outside might remain uncertain, their family had found something rare and precious: safety, love, and the quiet certainty that they could face whatever challenges lay ahead, together. With the threat from Hawthorne behind them, life on the ranch began to settle into a peaceful rhythm, though Elias knew that true tranquility was often fleeting. Yet, for the first time in years, there was a sense of completeness, a quiet strength that came from facing adversity and overcoming it together. The fields were green, the livestock healthy, and the children's laughter filled the air from morning until dusk. Every corner of the ranch seemed alive with energy. Nurtured by the presence of Isolde, who had become much more than a helper, she had become a part of the family. Isolde herself moved through the days with a gentle pride. She had always been strong and capable, but now she felt something deeper: belonging. After years of wandering alone, rejected by her own family, and forced to care for lands without love, she had finally found a home where she was needed and appreciated. The children adored her, not only for her extraordinary strength and wisdom, but for the warmth she brought into their lives. She guided them through chores, taught them about the land, and shared stories that sparked imagination and courage. Every small laugh, every question, every moment of curiosity from the children reinforced the sense of purpose she had long sought. Elias observed her quietly, often standing in the background, marveling at the transformation in his children and the ranch itself. He realized that Isolde had changed their lives in ways that went beyond labor or protection. She had given them stability, love, and a sense of hope that had been missing since his wife's passing. He found himself thinking of her constantly, drawn not only to her strength and skill but to the kindness and depth in her heart. He knew that he cared for her in a way he had never imagined, and he sensed that she cared for him in return, though neither had spoken the words aloud. The town, too, had begun to accept Isolde. What had once been fear and suspicion gradually turned into admiration and respect. People who had whispered behind her back now spoke openly of her bravery, her dedication, and her wisdom. The story of how she had defended the ranch from Hawthorne's men spread throughout the valley, and even those who had doubted her abilities could not deny the truth. She had become a symbol of courage and loyalty, someone who had faced loneliness, fear, and adversity, yet chose to use her strength for good. Elias decided it was time to formalize their partnership, not only for the children's sake, but for the future of the ranch. One quiet evening, as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson, he approached Isolde while she tended the garden. He spoke softly, unsure if the words would come out as he intended. Isolde, you have given us more than I can ever describe. You have protected us, taught us, and filled our lives with joy. I want you to be part of this family. Fully. Not just as a helper, but as someone I can rely on, someone we can call family forever. Isolde paused, looking into his eyes. Her expression, a mixture of surprise, relief, and quiet happiness. She had longed for this sense of belonging, but she had never dared hope it could truly exist. Elias, she whispered, I have only ever wanted a place to belong. If this is it, then I will stay. I will stay with you. With the children. With this land. In that moment, the unspoken bond between them became clear. They were no longer just protector and caretaker, but partners in life, connected by shared experience, trust, and love. The children celebrated her acceptance, running to her with hugs and laughter. They called her their giant mother, and she embraced the title with joy. The ranch felt alive in a new way. The house echoed with warmth. The fields thrived, and the family's connection grew stronger with each passing day. Every morning, Isolde would walk through the land, checking on the animals, tending the crops, and smiling at the children as they played, learning, and growing. She was a presence of calm, strength, and love, guiding the family while remaining part of the world she had long sought to belong to. Over time, Elias and Isolde found small moments of quiet intimacy. They worked side by side in the fields, repaired fences together, and shared long walks through the hills surrounding the ranch. They spoke of dreams for the future, of hopes for the children, and of the life they wanted to build together. While words were often few, their actions spoke volumes. Every shared task, every smile, and every gentle touch reinforced the bond they had cultivated through trials, trust, and time. The children grew more confident and resilient under Isolde's guidance. She taught them to respect the land, to care for animals, and to value courage, kindness, and perseverance. They learned to work together, to face challenges without fear, and to embrace the lessons of both success and failure. Elias watched them thrive, grateful that their lives had been enriched by Isolde's presence. He knew that she had given them something no one else could, a sense of security, love, and the knowledge that they were valued. As the seasons changed, the ranch flourished like never before. Crops were abundant, the cattle were healthy, and the home was filled with laughter and joy. The land seemed to respond to the care and dedication given by both Elias and Isolde. Together, they had transformed not only the ranch but their own lives, creating a family rooted in trust, love, and mutual respect. One day, Elias and Isolde stood together atop a hill overlooking the vast fields. The sun was setting, casting long shadows and painting the sky in deep shades of orange and purple. The children played nearby, their laughter carried by the breeze. Elias turned to Isolde, feeling a profound sense of peace and gratitude. "We've come a long way," he said softly. "From fear and loneliness to this. You've given us everything." Isolde smiled, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "And you have given me something I never thought I could have," she replied. "A family, a home, a place where I belong." In that moment, words were not enough to express the depth of their feelings. They simply stood together, hand in hand, looking out over the land that had become more than property. It had become a home, a symbol of hope, love, and shared purpose. The town now viewed the family as a model of resilience and cooperation. People came to admire the way Elias and Isolde worked together, raising children with care, managing the ranch with skill, and supporting one another through challenges. The story of the abandoned giant bride who had become a part of a struggling family spread beyond the valley, inspiring others to see the value of kindness, courage, and love. In the quiet moments, Isolde reflected on her journey. She thought of the years of wandering alone, the pain of rejection, and the longing for connection. She had faced fear, loneliness, and uncertainty, yet she had persevered. And now, she had found something she had longed for all her life: a family who loved her, a home where she was needed, and a life filled with purpose. The land she had once guarded alone was now shared with love, laughter, and hope, and she felt a deep sense of fulfillment she had never imagined possible. The children, sensing the bond between Elias and Isolde, thrived in an environment of love and support. They grew confident, curious, and compassionate, learning lessons that would carry them into adulthood. Isolde's guidance, patience, and wisdom left an indelible mark on their lives, shaping them into kind and resilient individuals. Elias watched them with pride, knowing that their happiness was a reflection of the love and care that had been nurtured within the family. Evenings at the ranch became moments of quiet reflection and connection. The family would gather around the fire, sharing stories, dreams, and simple joys. The stars above seemed brighter, the air more peaceful, and the land more alive. Elias and Isolde often found themselves sitting together, holding hands, feeling the strength and warmth of the bond they had cultivated. They had faced challenges, doubts, and fear. Yet through it all, they had created a life filled with love, trust, and hope. As the years passed, the ranch continued to thrive. Elias and Isolde worked together as partners, raising the children with care and wisdom. The land, once threatened by disputes and uncertainty, became a symbol of resilience and dedication. The story of their journey, the abandoned giant bride who had become a part of a struggling family, was remembered not only for its uniqueness, but for the values it represented: courage, kindness, and the transformative power of love. On a quiet evening, as the family stood together on the hill overlooking the fields, Elias realized something profound. Life was not about perfection or ease. It was about connection, love, and the courage to face challenges together. He looked at Isolde, feeling a deep gratitude for the path that had brought her into their lives. She had given them hope, protection, and guidance, and in return, they had given her a home, a family, and a sense of belonging. Isolde stood beside him, her eyes scanning the horizon. She felt a sense of peace and fulfillment that she had never known. The ranch, the children, and Elias had become more than her responsibility. They had become her heart, her purpose, and her home. The land she had once protected alone was now alive with love and laughter, a living testament to the power of care, dedication, and human connection. In the golden light of the setting sun, the family remained together, a symbol of resilience, hope, and the enduring strength of love. The ranch thrived, the children grew strong, and the bond between Elias and Isolde deepened with every passing day. And as night fell, with stars twinkling above and a gentle breeze rustling through the fields, it was clear that the journey of the abandoned giant bride had reached a place of peace, belonging, and joy. A life she had longed for, finally realized in full.